to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk. Radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's ubnradio.com.
Welcome to the National Safe Child Show, addressing the health, safety, and welfare of all children nationwide, because it shouldn't hurt to be a child. Here is your host, Tammy Stefano.
Hi folks, welcome to the National Safe Child Show. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being concerned with the safety of children, not only here in America, but worldwide, because we have to always remember that the children are growing up. Time is passing by so fast, and they are the future. And if we don't take care of them and nurture them and create a good foundation, a healthy foundation, then we can't blame them later when they age out and become adults and are just, their actions are no less calm than a feral cat's. We need to protect the children, folks. It will protect society as a whole. So I want to dedicate this show to my dad, who is very ill, and I've been with him for the past couple of days, and everybody that, whoever you pray to, I just ask you to keep Ron in your prayers, please, as he's struggling. So I love you, Dad. Okay, we have an incredible guest coming on today, not in the studio because he's not in California. He's in Louisiana. Lake Charles. Maybe we remember Lake Charles from General Hospital. I always attribute Lake Charles to General Hospital. He's in Lake Charles, and his story, or better said, his daughter's story, is just phenomenal. And it's sad, and this family has been broken apart. And he has just written a book that was released in June of this year. The title is The Darker Side of Justice. Gerald Price. He's a grandfather. He's now, once again, although he's fathered 3 children of his own, to protect his family, he has now taken custody of his 2 grandchildren. The reason being is his daughter is incarcerated. So, folks, I suggest that you take a look at his book. We'll get into discussing that. But just to give you a brief synopsis before we have Gerald come on live, his daughter was a stepmom, married a man who wasn't married prior, but did father a child, and he eventually won custody because the biological mother of his firstborn had some serious issues and drug abuse. And so this stepson comes to live in Jamie's home, and Jamie is really the focal point today. Jamie was a young woman. She didn't have any children. She never missed church. Her family is pillars in the community and have been. Her father is a 30-year resident of Lake Charles and volunteers and is part of many organizations and helps to keep the community close and whole. And they had laughter, and they had an open door policy for anybody. They lived only blocks away from each other. And after this woman married this man and they got custody of this young child, whose first name is Gabe, and we'll leave it at that, they then went on to parent 2 other children and biological children that they had. And this young child, the stepchild, began or always showed signs of some type of dysfunction. However, it worsened and worsened and worsened. And this mom eventually, the stepmother, eventually took this child to extensive therapy, took him to specialists, had him evaluated, went through sheer hell at different schools that he went to. And bear in mind, folks, this child, I believe, and we'll verify when he came to them, he was 7 or 8 years old. He was only a young kid. He self-mutilated. He did things that ordinarily we only see in a movie theater. And, it almost is borderline, some of the folks that I've spoken with, on exorcism type of, or possession type of situation. I know Gerald is on the phone. Hi, Gerald, are you with us?
Yes, this is Gerald.
Hi, Gerald. Welcome to the National Safe Child Show. I'm really happy to have you on with us, and I'm happy that you've taken such a stand to uncover what you feel is so corrupt and so wrong and such an injustice to your only daughter. I want to just finish for a moment telling the folks, just so that they have a clear synopsis of what we're going to now delve into in a moment. So this stepmother eventually got accused of child abuse, abusing this child, even though there was a long-standing history of her crying out for help, her getting the help, her following the directives of the medical professionals, and she did, her videotaping these events that this child went into this tantrum or beyond. I mean, it really was beyond a tantrum as we might know it to be. And through what Gerald is going to explain, a corrupt entity, that being Child Protective Services, this corruption then spiraled down to include a community of legal professionals who, either with full intent or without intent, but kind of jumping on the bandwagon, or maybe being forced to jump on the bandwagon within Lake Charles, they all went into this collusive type of plan. Ultimately, Jamie, his only daughter, was convicted and sentenced to 30 years in prison. No prior history of any criminal past, correct, Gerald?
That's correct.
She had no criminal history. She was a law-abiding citizen. She was a great mother, according to the community, her neighbors, your family, but yet it seems to be that the social workers had a vendetta, and it started off like that, and it just spiraled down the dark rabbit hole that we've discussed so many times in the National Safe Child Show. So I'm not going to speak anymore. You're the guest, and I really want you to take center stage. Introduce yourself briefly, and then let's delve in so that the audience can hear it all.
Well, thank you, Tammy, and I would also like to say thank you very much for allowing me to be on today, and I'm excited also at the opportunity to share our story.
This story is so intense that when the crowd just applauded, I jumped. I mean, that's how thick the air is. And I already know the story, folks, but you'll be jumping too. Okay, go ahead, Gerald.
My name is Gerald Price, and I'm from Lake Charles, Louisiana.
Yes.
And I am the father of the true victim in this case. And as we discussed, I'd like to just start with how we ended in juvenile court, and then I'll back up and
That's great.
talk about how we got.
That's a
talk about
perfect
how we
beginning.
got there. But the setting for what I would say right now is, we were in juvenile court. 2 years had transpired of all sorts of court hearings and accusations, and because we so absolutely knew that our daughter was innocent, we immediately began to challenge the accusations. And I think that what we discovered is when you do oppose DCFS, you get their worst, because they began to mount an attack against us that was unbelievable.
Yes.
And but as we were in the court, and after those 2 years of just horrible, nightmarish litigation, and we had come to the end of it, and we were hoping that things would turn out to our favor, but unfortunately, after these 2 years, the judge had prepared a ruling that was completely against us. We were going to lose, according to his ruling, our 2 grandchildren who were just bystanders in this whole thing, if you would. They weren't really bystanders because they were in it. But what I mean is that they just became victims of the process. And we were going to lose those children. The judge had a court order prepared to say that my daughter had to adhere to a state-paid psychiatrist recommendation that she spend a year in a psychiatric ward to be treated for his diagnosis of why she committed things that she in reality never committed.
Okay.
And as he read that ruling, this is the most fascinating part of this story. It's very difficult for me to cram it into a few sentences here.
Okay.
But there was a journal that had been prepared by the foster mom who had oversight of this alleged victim after my daughter's arrest.
So after your daughter was arrested, DCFS obviously had been involved, but then they removed the child from your daughter's care, and they put the child with a foster mother who they had used for many years and they were very comfortable with. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And I guess I'm getting back to the front before the end here.
No, that's okay. But I just want the audience to understand that the child was with a foster mother who had a long-standing, credible history with the department. They trusted her, and in fact, they told her to log daily activity while while the child stayed with her, just so that now when you go on to tell this, they have a clear understanding. Okay, go ahead.
Absolutely. She was had a record of having successfully fostered over 60 foster children, and she had adopted 4. She was a very compelling witness, and she was advised by the DCFS worker that she should maintain a very accurate record of everything that was said while she had this child in her care, because she advised it was a very high-profile case.
Okay.
So this journal mysteriously was withheld from the courts, and we'll talk about how that all happened later, but it had been withheld from the courts, from discovery, from every part of the process. And when I say the journal was withheld, not totally. There were portions of the journal submitted into discovery, but the portions that were non-beneficial to the state's case, they actually hid those from the courts and did not report them.
Okay.
And in a very, what I believe now is a very strategic move by the district attorney's office, this journal was submitted into discovery literally on the day before this juvenile court judge was scheduled to rule in this ruling that was going to devastate our family. Our defense attorney's paralegal found this journal in its entirety in a banker's box of discovery the day before, and submitted it and handed it literally to our defense attorney as he was walking into the courthouse to hear this judge's ruling.
Now,
so the setting is, if I can create this setting for you in my mind, I'm not allowed in the juvenile courtroom, but there's a door there with a rectangular glass. And I'm so anxious, as the whole family is, as to how the judge is going to rule here. And the only way that I know that I'll be able to determine how the judge rules in advance is just watch through that window and watch my daughter's face.
Right.
And I watched her face fall. I watched her drop her head, and the tears began to fall. And so I knew that the judge was ruling against us. And I only recently obtained the record and read exactly what he ruled. But anyway, it was totally against us.
Now,
Our family would have been...
This is in criminal court now.
No, we're in juvenile
Oh,
court.
juvenile court. Okay, go ahead.
And he at this point, he has made his ruling. While he is making his ruling, though, as it is literally going on, our defense attorney is sitting alongside my daughter in the courtroom and reading this journal to himself for the first time since this case began.
Gerald, let me ask you. They got this. They had this box. They discover the box. They discover this journal. The journal is, in fact, a record that the foster mother had kept, a log, a daily log. Why didn't they ever discover this journal before? Why didn't they ever open up this box? Where did the box come from?
The box was a banker's box that was delivered from the district attorney's office to our defense attorney the day before this juvenile court ruling was taking place. So they literally, the journal had been in existence for some 2 years, well over a year completed. It started in July of 2010, and the journal's content concluded in September of 2010. And we are in 2012, and this journal has been in existence. What DCFS was doing was extracting the pages of the journal that they did not want the courts to see and submitting the balance of the journal to the courts.
So whatever benefited their direction, would that be fair to say?
Exactly. And the content of the journal was so very compelling. It was so telling because he was reenacting all of the self-injurious behavior that he had done in my daughter's. Everything she wrote in her journal mirrored our family's claims. And at one point, he even looked at her when he was having one of his major meltdowns.
No, the child. You're speaking about... Okay, the child looked at your daughter. Okay.
She has it recorded in the journal where he looks at her and he says, "I am going to do to you what I did to Jamie Day." And it's a horrific description because just prior to that, he had gone through like literally an hour and a half of rage, of growling and clawing himself and screaming and trying to harm himself. And then suddenly, according to her description, he stops and he coldly looks at her and he says, "I'm going to do to you what I did to Jamie Day."
So he's speaking to the foster mother. He's speaking now to the foster mother.
He's speaking out to the foster mom, and she is just simply reporting.
Right. And I'm going to do to you what I did to Jamie Day. Jamie Day, folks, is Gerald's daughter, the woman that we're speaking about. Okay, go ahead.
She asked him then, "What is it that you're going to do?" And he said, "I'm going to hurt myself and tell the worker." That's what he referred to the DCFS worker as "I'm going to hurt myself and tell the worker you did it." That's what I did to Jamie Day because she had 2 other children and she wouldn't show me enough attention. You have 2 children here, and you're not showing me enough attention, and I'm going to do it to you. Now,
wow.
There was a lot more. There was so much more to that journal,
right?
Because it was a constant history of him harming himself,
right?
And there were even pictures. This is how bad it got. This boy harmed himself badly enough in foster care to need medical attention. And when the foster worker called DCFS to report it and said he needed to go to the hospital, they refused to allow her to take him to the hospital because of the exposure. They could not at this point afford to get this child in public view harming himself.
Did she record, Gerald, the injuries that she felt needed medical attention but was directed by the department? You can't seek medical attention, take care of it. Did she record what those injuries were?
She took pictures and sent the pictures to them, and we have copies of the pictures in our files.
Wow.
Now, I told all that.
What were the injuries?
What happened? Ma'am?
Yes, what were the injuries? I mean, what showed on these pictures?
He had harmed himself on the face. He had bruised some things. I would have to go back and check the record to tell you exactly what all it was, but it was several things, and she felt that he needed to be checked out at the emergency room.
Okay.
That he had harmed himself.
So they're in the court. You're looking through the glass. Your daughter puts her head down.
And he's reading this for the first time. Protocol in the courtroom, the judge has heard all the evidence. He is making his final ruling, so nobody's interrupting him. But while he's doing that, the defense counsel is sitting there at the table reading this journal, and he's whispering under his breath to my daughter, "This is about to get good." That's his terminology. This is about to get really good.
Right.
And she can't imagine what he's talking about because she hadn't heard anything that was good. She had to go. By the way, the cost of sending her to this institution was going to be, the expectation from the court was that I, myself, as her father, would pay for that, and that was at a tune of $100,000 for her to go over there.
How old was your daughter that the judge felt that you were financially responsible? How old was she? Was she underage?
No, she's 20. She's 30 years old.
She was 30 years old. The court decides that they want her to go to a facility. Did you pick the facility out? Did she?
No. And he, I don't think he just directed in the courts that I would pay for it, but I know it's in the court records that her father would have to pay for it because there was a contentious discussion between defense counsel and the psychiatrist who was testifying for the state that the father should. He had some perception that I had a lot more money than I did. So I don't know what fed him that idea, but anyway, that was his perception. But we said all this to say it was such a momentous moment because my daughter. At the end of the ruling, the judge finalizes his ruling, and that it is at that point that the defense counsel stands and says, "Your Honor, I have new evidence." And as he began to read these excerpts from this journal, and he reads the portion where I'm going to do to you what I did to Jamie Day, well, the state side, all of their attorneys over there began to shout objections, saying, we don't know anything about this evidence. And the response from the defense counsel was, "We got it from them, Your Honor. They've had this journal for a full year, and it goes to the heart of your ruling, and they've been withheld it." And so there's some confusion as to how many people on the district attorney's office side knew about the journal and how many didn't. I don't know that everybody was informed, but I know this, and this is a very careful point that should be considered. The expert witnesses for the district attorney's office is the source from which the district attorney's office got the journal. And we know that they had it in September of 2010. The connection of the dots is to determine when exactly did they give it to the district attorney's office and how long did the district attorney's office have possession of it before they submitted it to our attorney 2 years later.
Well, they gave it to your attorney, this discovery, after the trial had ended, and it was just it was a day before, and the only thing left was the sentencing. How many years was your daughter going to get, and was she guilty? And that all happened the next day, correct?
No, and that's what has to be clear.
Okay.
We were in juvenile court proceedings then.
Okay.
The only thing that's being determined in the juvenile court proceedings is what's the future of the children. And the judge had decided that the way we were going to do it was follow the recommendations of the state-paid psychiatrist who, in my view, and this is based on my observation of him for 2 years, that he just simply was a rubber stamp for the state's case.
We hear this all the time. Okay.
But based on his recommendation, the judge was going to say that the only way, he couldn't order her into this facility, but he could say that's the only way I'll consider giving you your children.
Okay.
He's saying the psychiatrist recommends that you go spend a full year in this place in Tennessee.
Okay.
I don't have the name of it in front of me.
All right.
And if you follow that recommendation, your children will remain in state's custody until you've progressed to the point that we can address whether or not we'll ever let you see them again. If you do not follow his recommendations, your children are going into the adoption program, and you'll never see them again.
Wow.
Now that's where we were sitting on that day.
Okay.
We haven't even at that point gotten to criminal trial yet.
Okay.
So when they were caught, by the revelation of this journal, suddenly the testimony of every one of the state's experts became subject to rebuke, because the foster mom testified that she provided copies on a weekly basis, updated, every time she visited each of those respective experts' offices. So, and she had that documented in her law.
So she was able to go in and give testimony during the dependency court hearing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And was her testimony...
But she was never called in, really, for the dependency because her journal had never yet been fully exposed.
So did she ever give testimony?
I don't recall she did, but if she did, it didn't have the significance it did in the criminal trial because nobody really understood what all she had to say.
Okay.
It wasn't until the journal was revealed.
Okay, so the big component here is we have a mother, we have a young lady who is accused of doing heinous, torturous things to a child that she says she is innocent of. Gerald Price, her father, has been fighting to expose what he says is corruption by the social workers, by the Department of Children and Family Services, by these so-called medical experts, psychiatrists or psychologists who were cherry-picked, hand-picked by the state to defend their case and their direction, which was take this mother down and remove the children. Right?
That's a very good synopsis.
Okay. All right. We time goes so fast, and I want to make sure that we cover everything. Your daughter will, she says, till her dying day, profess her innocence because she simply never hurt this child. I want you to tell us about some of the things that Gabe did, and tell the audience some of the witnesses on a normal basis, daily basis, that may have seen what Gabe was doing before your daughter went to prison.
Yeah, well, it was a slowly progressive thing, and I write about this in a book I wrote on this case that I'm sure we're going to talk about before it's over. But he, what happened? My daughter married this guy, and this child was born out of a relationship that he had with another woman. And
I've explained. I've given a brief synopsis before you came on the air.
Okay. All right. Well, what he would do, initially it came across that he was just a bright kid that needed rescuing from a bad situation. We were all happy about it. It was an evolution that started at some point in 2009, or maybe the latter part of 2008, first indicators. But we just started seeing these changes in him.
Okay.
And it was after, for several years it was a visit at his home, visited at Jamie's home and all that, but then it finally got to the point that they went to court and got complete custody of him. And it wasn't long, he started these habit changes. He would begin to steal and lie and destroy property and stuff like that. And it started out as small stuff, and it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew, and finally he got to the point he was self-inflicting and wouldn't eat, starving himself, and he had these really strange behaviors, like he would walk into a room with the neighbors, the next door neighbors in the home. They were sitting around drinking a Coke or having a cup of coffee or something, and he just walk in the room, drop his pants, and defecate in the floor.
In the front of everybody?
In front of everybody, with everybody looking. And they say, "Why'd you do that?" He'd say, "Because I don't like them here. I don't want them here. Get them out of here." He began to self-inflict any way he could, to the point that she had, and this all really accelerated in about a 90-day period of time.
Okay.
It really just spiraled to the point that he was banging his head on things, and she'd have to take him to the emergency room once. He took a screwdriver and tried to stab himself in the nostril.
Oh, my God.
And he missed and went through his lip.
Oh, my
and
God.
She took him to the emergency room. His explanation was that he had heard that he could kill himself and be reborn, and that way he could come back as her real son.
Wow. This is all documented at the hospital. I mean, in other words,
yes,
this child is speaking to the doctors. They're saying what happened, and he's giving them what you just described, correct?
Yes. It's at this point, he is under a constant care of psychiatrists from the local hospital there. He's under constant weekly visitations from child counselors. At this point, his behavior had escalated so bad that he couldn't function in a public school, so he had been placed in the homebound program, and there was a homebound school teacher coming to his home each and every week to teach lessons to him. And all of his problems were being documented. Neighbors on every side were in the home. Those neighbors came and testified at trial about all of this stuff.
Okay.
But the state...
Who was... Wait a minute, one more thing. While he's being taken to the therapist, and while all of this extra care and extra attention is being given to him by many outside professionals, who was the person that was holding his hand through it all?
Jamie Day.
Your daughter.
My daughter.
She was the one who was seeking help in order to have this child feel whole again, because clearly there was something wrong.
Let me share this with you, because this is a very good example of the situation. I'm Dad and I'm Pawpaw. I'm Papa.
Yeah.
Those are my grandchildren and my daughter.
Yes.
And this situation had got so volatile that I knew that no matter what she tried to tell me, that it had gotten too big for her to have.
Right.
And on 3 occasions, when she had to take him to the hospital kept him for a 5-day stay. And he loved those. He'd instantly switch over to transform to a different sort of guy, because they would give him anything he asked for. If he ordered 3 large pizzas, somebody would go down and get him. So he felt like he was king there. So then he would revert back to being the good little boy that we used to know.
Okay.
He could switch it on and off. It's really unbelievable unless you saw it. But on his 3rd stay there, because I had seen how bad it got, I said, listen, you can't handle this. Because she had been trying her very best to get him in permanent care. Right. And there is no permanent care for a child with those situations in the state of Louisiana. It's just not available. So, and because she couldn't get him in, so I said, listen, you got to draw a line. You can't deal with this. So, right or wrong, I said, when he goes back this next time, don't go get him. Tell him you're going to have to find him some help, because you can't help him.
Right.
And my daughter said to me, Dad, I know you don't understand this, but he is the only parent. I'm the only parent, the only real parent he's ever had. And if anything should ever happen to him, I'd always blame myself. And my daughter called me from prison just recently, weeping because she had heard this boy had been placed in a boys' school, and she's saying, Dad, there's nobody that really cares about Gabe. And
She doesn't
But they
hate.
sent
She
her
doesn't
prison.
hate him. She loves him
No.
still because she recognizes, unlike the state-appointed professionals, that he truly has some psychological damage that has never been addressed properly. Instead, it's just been band-aided. It's been medicated, and it has been swept under the carpet and made to look one way. But she still cares. She's still crying while she sits in prison. Gerald, we've got to move it along because we still have a lot to cover and a little time.
Yes.
She's in prison.
Well,
How many years was she given?
She was sentenced to 30 years in the women's facility in St. Gabriel, Louisiana. And the trial was unbelievable because after we had won so decisively in the juvenile court, and we knew that we could go into the criminal court and expose these people for what they really were.
Right.
We saw a total collapse in the criminal trial of our own defense, and we don't have an explanation for that. And they allowed the same witnesses, the same experts, to testify as experts to an unsuspecting jury who had no knowledge that those people were guilty of withholding evidence, being part of a conspiracy to hold evidence, and were all subject to lose their license should Jamie Day win that trial.
So in other words, there was so much evidence that there would have been a very large civil litigation lawsuit for the wrongdoing, the cover-up, and the failures that these professionals clearly had done. So in order to avoid that altogether, it was much easier just to take down one, and that was your daughter.
Somebody had to pay for their sins, and they decided it was easier to let an innocent woman go to prison than to come out in the open and admit that they had made a horrible mistake. Somewhere along the way, everybody realized, that this is my belief, this is my contention, I believe somewhere along the way, everybody realized she was innocent.
Right.
And but at that point, she was painted in the media as a monster, and there was no going back for them.
I want to just say to the audience, the National Safe Child Show addresses the health, welfare, and safety of children. And part of that encompasses domestic violence, wrongdoings, corruption, all relative to the safety of children. And this show is a little different in the sense that we're taking Jamie Day and her love for children and a child that truly has been failed, and we're taking this show in a little bit of a different direction. This gentleman, Gerald Price, is the father, and this is his child that he's fighting for. And although she's not a minor child, this is his only daughter, and he's fighting for her life, and he's asking people to really take a hard look at his book. Let's talk about the book for a moment before we continue. The name of the book is The Darker Side of Justice. Again, it was released in June. How can folks get this book?
Well, you can buy it at Amazon.com, and all you have to do is type in the title, and it'll take you straight to it. It'll be the first book. It'll be the first item on the list that comes up if you type the title in correctly. The Darker Side of Justice.
Okay.
The subtitle is Convicting Jamie Day. You can also go to the title, The Darker Side of Justice, all one word, Tate Author, T-A-T-E, author, A-U-T-H-O-R, .com /, and it'll take you to a site to purchase the book.
Okay.
Directly from the publisher.
How much money have you spent trying to expose the truth of your daughter's innocence? How much has it cost your family, if we can know?
It's really hard for me to say because I haven't calculated it. I hadn't kept up with it. To be perfectly honest with you, we have been the members of a local church here for the whole 30 years we've been here for their own purposes. I won't say the name of the church just
Right.
to,
Okay.
I don't want to tie them publicly to this case. There's been some controversy about that. We've been accused of running a campaign against local politicians or something. But that church, I had a lot of support from that church, so the church was able to provide us with some assistance, but it cost several $1,000s even to publish this book.
Right.
And the defense of my daughter, it's astronomical because it's $200,000 or $300,000 in the defense of my daughter.
Right.
And then getting the story out is it's just a never-ending process. But I want to talk just for a minute about how how we wrote this story. When about 6 months or 8 months ago, I guess, into this whole process, I started keeping a journal because I said, I've got to know these facts, and I can't remember all this. I'll never remember. So I just started writing it down.
Right.
And that process I realized one day I was writing a book. And after I had written it down, I finished it up, and when she was convicted, I sent the manuscript off to a couple places, and both the places I sent it offered me a book deal.
So this was a journal that you kept as all of these things were taking place, just so that you would remember. And
Exactly.
you finally compiled it into a book that the general public can read, because this story is intense. Folks, we hear about people that are guilty of raping, molesting, murdering children, and we see continuously, and it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. It's part of our big fight to change policies and laws to hold child abusers accountable. Not the slap on the wrist, not the school teacher who raped the 14-year-old that eventually took her life. Why? Because he got 30 days. 30 days. But yet we have Jamie Day, who took this child to a multitude of professionals. It was documented. He was being evaluated. There were home visits. He was expelled from many schools, not only with Jamie Day, the stepmother, but eventually problems on a daily basis that are written about in the journal that the foster parent kept well after Jamie Day was accused. And all of this was suppressed. The jury never heard any of this. In fact, Gerald, am I correct in saying that when it made it to criminal court, that the jury never heard any testimony of the foster mother?
No, that's not true. She did testify.
Okay.
But what they were able to do was successfully prevent any circumstance or information or details of the juvenile court from being presented. And therefore, when they viewed, say, the state psychiatrist allowed her to testify, and then he, as an expert, looked at her and said, this is a well-meaning lady, but she's untrained in how to collect data, and her data is misleading. And the jury bought it.
So the journal, the daily journal of a person who actually did experience this with this child and saw this firsthand, unlike this state professional, she was deemed by the state professional as an untrained, inexperienced, non-professional who had no expertise with these behavioral situations.
Or collecting the data. Any one of us as human beings could just sit down and tell what happened, and that should be sufficient. But it became
a rich research data situation, and it ultimately just became the red bureaucratic tape that stopped evidence or stopped a true testimony from being given and stop the truth from actually being spoken in the criminal courtroom. Would that be right?
Yes, and it even goes further. To help support their case, they hired an expert out of Mississippi. And in a miraculous thing, we were given a record of his email exchange between him and the district attorney's office that exposed the fact that he agreed to come and testify for him, and acknowledges in the email that he had no knowledge of the case. He had done no research on it, but he said, "That's all right. I'll be there to testify. Just kind of give me some basics of what you need for the role you need me to play," which fortifies the notion that we've all come to believe is that they just pay these people to say what they want them to say for a fee, and they're willing to do it.
Okay. This expert, do you happen to have that email? I don't know if you have it handy. I know you sent it to me. Okay.
I don't have it handy.
Okay. I saw the email, and the email was an email between this expert that was being hired to go against your daughter, or later on we clearly saw that, but he was hired from the state that the prosecution, right, that was prosecuting your daughter.
Correct.
And the email basically said, "I'm en route, getting on an airplane or doing some traveling, just coming from one place. I don't have a lot of time. And as a matter of fact, I haven't had a chance to look at anything. So if you can just give me some direction via email, I'm yours." I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but that's pretty much what it said. Tell me what.
That's exactly
Tell me what you need for me to do. I'll be on the stand. I've got your back, and that's it.
And he's very compelling when he gets on the stand.
And he admitted in the email, "I have not had a chance to look at anything regarding this case."
And that's on a Friday. We're at a weekend, and he tells her, he said, "I'll be fully up to speed in the morning, but I've got 4 hours of driving to do in the morning. So whatever he's going to do, he's going to do it in the next short while." But the point here is, I don't even know what I'm talking about yet. Right now, I'm just telling you whatever I need to say, I'll be there to say it.
Right.
That's the whole point that's in his email, which lets you know you can be hired. And what was so troubling for me was one of the big discussions that we had through the process of looking for expert testimony for ourselves in the juvenile court was that our defense attorney explained to us, he says, "Hey, you run a high risk when you hire an expert because he might not tell you what you want to hear." But yet, and I write about this, have you ever heard of a prosecutor hiring a witness that got on the stand and harmed his case? Which really bothers me about how they solicit testimony.
Gerald, we're running out of time. There's so much that we still haven't covered. I need to tell the audience some other stuff. I want to just read a transcript, an excerpt from a transcript. This is the dependency court judge. He has just been made aware of this journal. And he says, "My ruling, as a result of this newly found evidence, will clearly change the outcome of this case. This court will vacate the prior finding that minor child 1 and minor child 2 are in need of care and order that the agency be released. This court will place the custody of these 2 boys with the maternal grandparents." Up until that point, you were not only scared that you were losing your daughter, but the department had taken custody of your 2 grandchildren.
They kept them for 2 full years.
2 years that you were denied. Did they ever have any marks, bruising, screwdrivers through their mouths, anything, any physical evidence?
No, but but DCFS alleged when they took them, they went into PM to a judge's house to get him to sign an order where they claimed that those two children were being starved, beaten, and burned, and that it was an emergency situation and they had to get them. And they came to my home and took those children. And I don't know if you've ever experienced watching authorities drive away with your children.
Absolutely.
There's no way I can describe that feeling.
You have custody of your two grandchildren now. We have a minute left, Gerald. Time goes so fast. You have custody of your grandchildren right now. The state dropped, there was 70 counts. They dropped 69, didn't they?
I thought it was 35, and they dropped all but 5, and then they ended up convicting her on 1.
And what was the one that they convicted her on? We have to go.
It was not defined. It's just the statute, abuse of a second-degree abuse of a child. It didn't have a specific charge, and that's one of the questions my daughter asked. What did you convict me of?
Nobody knew what the hell was going on in this whole damn case, folks, but I can tell you this. Second-degree child abuse this woman has been convicted of. There are a multitude of professionals who saw this child and, as a matter of fact, gave directives, and your daughter took video of what he was doing per the direction of his therapist throughout the course of this time. The child was put on 2 medications, folks, that the state of Louisiana damn well knows was mislabeled and was not to be given, and as a matter of fact, took the biggest history lawsuit against a pharmaceutical company, $1.5 billion. I've just discovered this and shared it with Gerald, for this pharmaceutical company giving these children this drug that really screwed them up. This boy was mutilating. The woman got convicted, 30 years, no priors. The name of the book is The Darker Side of Justice. How can people reach you, Gerald, if they want to? If advocates, if an attorney wants to help, if somebody wants to look at the wrongdoing, how can they reach you? And then we have to go.
Please reach me at my email address.
Which
and
is?
If you do that,
I'll
close it. Gerald, Gerald, .price, 1122.
1122 at gmail.com?
That's correct.
Okay. Gerald, we have to go. We're going off the air.
Thank you for listening to the National Safe Child Show.
Thank you
on
so
UBN
much.
Radio.
We honor
For
you.
past
We're by
episodes,
your side,
visit
Gerald.
the archives on ubnradio.com. And for more information, go to nationalsafechildcoalition.com.